Hello everyone, it's Brian here, and this is kind of a weird video to make, and I'm making it because of this. Although it will be minimally connected to music. If you were an eagle-eyed watcher, some time ago you may have noticed I had a little band-aid right here, and so I'm going to describe this and link it up in a sort of way to music because this is a vinyl community channel after all. But yesterday I had a surgical procedure to remove what is known as basal cell carcinoma. That is in fact a form of skin cancer. The good news is that it's not virulent, rarely metastasizes, and it's completely treatable. So I just wanted to get that out of the way at the beginning. But I thought I would make this video because, well, you may notice, depending on when I make my next video, either you'll see stitches here, or if the stitches have been removed, you will see an obvious wound in my face. So let me just tell you a bit about the background. At my routine annual physical, I just made an offhand comment about a piece of what I thought was dry skin on my face, and I didn't really think much about it, didn't know what it was, but my doctor referred me to a dermatologist, which I thought was maybe a little bit unnecessary because, what do I know? But what do I know? But he said, let's just have it looked at. And I thought that's interesting because I didn't really think much about it. Now, originally my appointment was for late April, which hasn't even happened yet. But because of a cancellation, they called me of all people and I got in early. And when I showed up, the dermatologist took one look at it and said, that is basal cell carcinoma. And I was, I don't know much about skin cancers, and not being a doctor, and I was immediately taken aback. And it's one of those things where I sort of stopped listening almost because he said that, and I went into this really reflective state where I thought, what does this mean for my life? Maybe I should retire sooner than I thought. These weird thoughts, but yet he was telling me at the same time that it's not really an issue. It's very common. It's never really a concern for early death. It's fine. Like, it's treatable. They'll fix it, and you get on with your life. You take precautions. But I went through what I would say was in the next couple of days the stages of grief, to be honest, because I was first in a state of disbelief because I don't suntan. I've always avoided the sun. My father, on the other hand, was a great worshiper of the sun. He would be out there in his Speedo all summer long. And I will say that ultimately he also had basal cell carcinoma, but very late in life. So the fact that I'm getting it much younger is a little concerning. So I don't suntan. When I'm at the beach, I wear sunscreen. I've never been a person to lie in the sun. So the first stage, I guess, was disbelief. But then I realized that, for the last 25 years or so, I have been cycling to work and back 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall, and without sunscreen on my face. So that obviously took its toll on my skin, and I think that probably was a mistake. But other than that, I do wear sunscreen at the beach. We were in Mexico recently. I wore sunscreen, but I also thought that when I'm in the backyard, just doing whatever gardening needs to be done, I wear a hat, of course, but I've worn a hat outside for years. I've just never worn sunscreen, so that was clearly a problem. And I had these feelings of, I don't know what the 4 stages of grief actually are, but I think, you have disbelief or whatever. And I felt like, why is it affecting me? Because I felt like I was the least likely candidate for it. And a bit of anger, that kind of thing. And ultimately, when I realized that I'd been cycling all this time outside and never wearing sunscreen, maybe I sort of accepted it. But it was a difficult couple of days, to be honest. And I wasn't really happy about it, but I was happy that the dermatologist's appointment was moved up, and they gave me several injections in the area to freeze it, and they sliced off the part that had been growing a little bit and had it sent for a biopsy. And sure enough, I received a call to confirm it and was scheduled in for an appointment at a local skin clinic for something that's called Mohs surgery. It's MOHS. And so what they do is again, I had several injections to freeze the area, and they cut you open and they take out layers of tissue, and each layer that's taken out is examined. So they take out one, they examine it to see if there's cancerous material in there, where the margins are, how far it extends, and they may have to do 2, 3, 4, 5 passes. So I was told I could be there for minimum 2 hours, maximum maybe 6 hours, depending on what they found. So I went there with my laptop with some downloaded shows, something to eat. I had to bring a lunch, something to drink. I had my phone, of course. And so they did this. They cut it open. It was kind of an odd feeling, because you could feel no pain, but the tugging, I had to breathe through my mouth at some point because I was smelling cauterized flesh. I didn't want to smell that. And then they said it was all clear. So after one pass, so I was out in maybe an hour and a half or an hour. I can't remember exactly. And I was kind of like, kind of a state of disbelief again, because I was expecting to be there all day and I was out soon. So I was like kind of happy, but mystified, I guess. And the irritating thing is that this has now been stitched. There's probably about a 2-inch space that is stitched. And once this bandage comes off, which I should be tomorrow, depending on when you do my next video, you will either see stitches, or if it's after that, you'll see like an obvious wound. So I wanted to explain why that's there. So you were like, what happened to your face? And so, yeah, I would say I had some sort of relief. And now I have a whole bunch of aftercare that has to be done with saline solution and ointments and that kind of thing. I will be probably left with a scar. It's difficult to say how obvious it will be. Worst case scenario is that I will look like I survived a duel in Prussia at some point, with a fencing duel maybe, or it could be better than that. I don't know. I have this scar kit, which is essentially silicone patches you put on overnight to reduce the scarring, but I have to wait to do that. So there's all these things I have to do. So that's but this has been going on for a while because the referral took a long time. So it's kind of been stressing me out, and I guess I got the best news possible. It's not the worst kind of cancer, and I don't want to. I'm not here looking for sympathy or trying to portray myself as some sort of cancer survivor, because I don't see myself that way. There are, of course, cancer survivors in the vinyl community and who've had a much harder go of it than this. This is pretty minimal, except that I wish it was on a different part of my body, not on my face. But at the same time, I was thinking about music, because I did some searching about music that relates to cancer, and there certainly are songs out there. I don't have some of the ones I read about, but there are people who adopt inspirational songs to talk about their experiences, like I Won't Back Down from Tom Petty's one that I recall, something about other songs about rising up, songs about resilience. In my collection, I was trying to think of songs that I had that related to cancer, and the first one that came to mind was from this album, from Joe Jackson, and there's a song in here called Cancer. This is Night and Day, which I think is his best record, and there's a song called Cancer. It's kind of an ironic song, because the lyrics, and you may know this already, are everything causes cancer, there's no cure, there's no answer, everything causes cancer. The funny thing is, and it's not surprising that he's depicted here with a cigarette in his hand, is that Joe Jackson is a proponent of smokers' rights, and someone who is arguing that smoking is not actually bad for your health, believe it or not. He's written about this topic. I read part of what he wrote years ago. I think it was called Smoker Smoking Lies in a Nanny State, in which he goes through, he claims to have interviewed all sorts of experts, and that his argument is that smoking is actually not bad for you. In fact, up to 10 cigarettes a day, he argues, will have certain health benefits. I don't remember what they are, but he lists them in the essay, which I think is pretty weird. He actually moved from the United States to Germany because of the creeping smoking bylaws in the United States. He wants to be able to sit in a bar with a drink and a cigarette and not be disturbed, and to be forced to go outside to smoke is something he couldn't stand, so he left the country. I don't know if he's still in Germany, but he was at the time. So pretty weird. I always give people the benefit of the doubt in terms of intelligence, and I'm obviously not a healthcare professional, so I tend to accept the results of various studies, and I know that tobacco companies were trying to say that tar on gravel roads were a cause of lung cancer. And he does talk about the fact that native people use cigarette smoke, but I think there's a big difference between pure tobacco and the stuff we get in cigarettes today, which has hundreds of chemicals, including arsenic. So it's a pretty weird thing. But anyway, that was the first song I thought about. And then I thought about two other tracks that are instrumental, so maybe don't have quite the impact. But here's one from a band called One Speed Bike. Well, I call it a band. This is called Droopy Butt Be Gone. Now, One Speed Bike is really a side project from Aidan Gert, who is a member of Godspeed You Black Emperor. I've been doing this alphabet thread that was started by Jacob, who has oddly deleted his channel. But I've talked a lot about Montreal post-rock. This is another Montreal post-rock album. It's pretty good. I mean, the song that I'm thinking about is an instrumental, but it's called Why Are All the Dogs Dying of Cancer? I don't know if that's true, but it's a fun song. And this album is really terrific. The first track is The Day That Morrow Ran Over Elwy Yost. And someone outside of Ontario, or maybe outside of Canada, might read that title and have no idea what that means. But Elwy Yost is kind of a legendary Canadian broadcaster. He hosted something called Saturday Night at the Movies on TVO, TV Ontario. And he would introduce and discuss classic films. That's where I saw Citizen Kane the first time. That's where I saw 2001 the first time. That's where I saw all the old Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce Sherlock Holmes films. Really great guy. His son went on to write and produce, I think, the movie Speed, and was involved in the Justified TV program, among other things. But I guess when you're making an instrumental record, you got to take some care with the titles. So there's like Any Movement That Forgets About Class is a bowel movement. My Kitchen is Tiananmen Square. Like, there's really interesting song titles here. That's only some of them. But Montreal post-rock, and a song, I can't say it's really about cancer, but it mentions it. And then this record from Godspeed You Black Emperor called Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antenna to Heaven. There's a track on here called Cancer Towers on the Holy Road Highway. I had to look that up. And again, it's instrumental. This is a fantastic record, Montreal post-rock again. There's two records in here, and each side has one track. So it's divided up into 4 tracks. There's 2 pieces of vinyl. That looks cancerous, if you ask me. And then the second record, the same as this. Interesting. So, again, not really truly about cancer, but the only 2 ones that I did a search on Discogs in my collection, and those are the only 2 that came up. And one other one came up which really surprised me, and that is this record from my youth, Rod Stewart, Tonight I'm Yours. Now, I almost forgot to mention, I should have said this. Here's something that might be interesting. This One Speed Bike record, because it starts with a numeral, a cardinal number, and not written out like O-N-E, I put that at the beginning before the A. Same is true with records. Like, if you go to my beginning of my record collection, you'll see 10cc, a band called 13 Engines, 10,000 Maniacs, because they're cardinal numbers, and that's the way the American Library Association does it. That's the ALA filing rules. That's what I do. So that's a little digression there. But this record from when I was a kid, Tonight I'm Yours by Rod Stewart, has a track called Never Give Up on a Dream, which he dedicated to Terry Fox and the Canadian Cancer Society. I didn't really look at this insert very long, but he discusses a bit about Terry Fox. Now, again, if you're not Canadian, you may not know, but Terry Fox lost his right leg to cancer when he was a teenager. He was born in 1958. And in 1980, he decided to start what he called the Marathon of Hope, and his goal was to run from the east coast of Canada clear across to the west coast by running the equivalent of a marathon every single day. After 143 days and 3,339 miles, he had to stop, and ultimately he died from a relapse or recurrence of cancer. So he's only 22. So that is described here. There's a description of of what Terry Fox did. Now, every year in Canadian schools, there is the Terry Fox Day for the Terry Fox Run, and the kids will run or walk a certain distance to raise money for cancer research, which I think is fantastic. Ultimately, another person did complete the Marathon of Hope. It was a guy named Steve Fogno who had the same condition. He lost his leg to cancer, and he did complete the run across Canada. But he's not really lauded like Terry Fox is, partly because he had some pretty horrible legal issues and issues of assault and whatnot after he completed the run. So Terry Fox is the hero of the story, even though he died tragically young at 22. And I hadn't really been aware that this state, I guess I didn't really look at it, that it was in here, but it's kind of an interesting side note there. And that's all I wanted to say, is really to mention this because I didn't want to leave it unsaid. And you might be wondering what happened to my face, but I guess the lesson here is to wear sunscreen, especially if you hail from a ethnic background that's similar to mine. My dad was born in Glasgow, kind of an unlikely suntanner, but he wore a Speedo pretty much every day in the summer, and ultimately paid the price because he did get this condition, but much later in life. He was much older than me when he got it, and he had some on his face and some on his leg, I believe. So it's just irritating that I got it much younger. But anyway, if you have this pasty, pale complexion like mine, you might want to consider wearing sunscreen. The other thing is, if you see anything strange on your skin, you need to have it checked out. That's the lesson there. It could be a lot worse. It could be melanoma. That is a lot worse. But I will be fine, and I'm not going anywhere. So you'll have to endure more videos from me in the future. So I'll talk to you in the next one.